Hence this recording business takes such a long time. Yeah, okay. Our point of discussion today is how the Rape of the Lock emerges as a unique mock heroic poem of the 18th century and how Pope uses the strategy of the mock heroic. Now, the mock heroic was one of the predominant satirical frameworks used by the 18th century to highlight several social problems, using an epic style to ridicule trivial matters. Pope's unique contribution lies in the way in which he infuses or he juxtaposes the sublime and the ridiculous while feminizing and aestheticizing the mock heroic framework. This then is the introduction. The occasion, of course, was a 1712 social brawl between two Catholic families, where Lord Peter had cut off a lock of hair from a Lady Arabella Fermor, leading to severe conflict. Pope's friend Carol had asked him to write a satire which would generate laughter and dissolve the social tension. Accordingly, Pope made an extremely suggestive replacement in the mock heroic by substituting the male protagonist with Belinda, and therefore feminized the epic in a very different way. Pope's choice of the mock heroic is significant. He had himself commented that the use of pompous expression for low actions is the perfection of the mock epic. Accordingly, for Pope, the typical mock heroic would choose a trivial incident which would then be hyped through epic features, metaphors, and language. And the discrepancy between the subject and the style would generate laughter and highlight the critical points that the text would want to make. Dryden, for example, had already used this to great effect by generating ridicule for Shadwell in Macflecknoe. Pope, in this case, elevated a minor social brawl to an Homeric epic status, thereby offering a subtle critique of Belinda's actions, advocated good nature and sense over rage and hysteria, and in general criticized the idle life of the aristocracy. In using the mock epic, Pope was falling back upon a number of sources. The obvious source was Homer's Iliad and the Odyssey, with the rape of Helen being the center of the poem. The battle of the Trojans with the Greeks is replaced by the battle of the sexes, while Ovid's Metamorphosis becomes a key text in several classical allusions, including that of Nisus or Ixion. Milton's Paradise Lost, the rebellion of Satan, the depiction of Eve, was another major source, while Catullus's poem on Berenice's lock was used copiously by Pope, especially in the conclusion of the poem. What is interesting to note is that this collage of classical texts is used by Pope to bring in every single epic convention, which are then very carefully substituted. The Rape of the Lock, therefore, is a very detailed evocation of the epic and substitutes with great precision almost every single epic convention. We might observe this from the Invocation, for example, where the Virgilian statement of purpose is immediately replaced when mighty conquests arise from trivial things. The binary between mighty and trivial is at the heart of the mock epic. However, Pope's poem does not descend into utter ridicule. He sublimates the mock epic, by breathing into Belinda an epic beauty, thereby claiming slight is the subject, but not the praise. What this does to the poem is, in fact, feminize the epic structure. Thus, the masculine ethos of the text is replaced by the delightful presentation of the feminine universe, where swords and weapons are replaced with makeup and the mirror. However, Pope infuses a sublime quality into Belinda's beauty, thereby raising it to a celestial status, repeatedly comparing Belinda with the sun. Her eyes eclipse that of the day. Even within this feminized world, however, Pope traces the mighty rage in soft bosoms that can generate social conflict. One of the most important parts of the text is the toilet scene, which imitates and substitutes the epic armor The steel swords are replaced with silver vases, and recurrently, Pope uses the martial metaphor with awful beauty, putting on all its charms. A single line, like puffs, powders, patches, Bibles, and billets doux, highlight the mock heroic strategy. The puff and the powder may both suggest makeup and armor. The patches and the Bibles might be part of the battlefront as well as the lady's bedchamber, whilst the seriousness of the line is dissolved by indicating the moral muddle within Belinda's consciousness by juxtaposing the Bible and the billets doux. This is where the satire against Belinda's pride becomes evident, in the sense that the sacred is juxtaposed with the profane. Another additional dimension is provided through the introduction of the sylphs, who substitute the intervention of the gods in the classical epic. Even here, the minuscule Ariel uses several military metaphors and formations, with the lucid squadrons and the light militia of the lower sky. The sylphs also refer to comic punishments, substituting the epic quartering of bodies with being stopped in vials or transfixed with pins. The sylphs play a dual role in the mock heroic. They add to the feminizing of the epic by highlighting the pride of women and their narcissism through several generations. They also add a third dimension of imagination and aestheticization of the epic, especially in the way in which their iridescent wings refract light and generate and liberate the reader's imaginative consciousness. The sylphs also provide a delightful comedy through the juxtaposition of the trivial and the mighty. An example is when the sylph is cut into two by the scissor and then united once again, being an airy substance. Several other epic strategies are also used. Belinda's journey to Hampton Court imitates the epic journey to Troy, whilst Umbriel's journey to the cave of spleen imitates the journey to the underworld. Even here, the vision of chaos and doomsday that the classical epic generates in the heat of the battle is imitated in a comic way, where pots, kettles, parrots, etc., are brought together in chaotic formation. The climaxes of the poem, of course, are the points where the epic structures are most copiously used. The game of Amber, for example, transforms a card trick into a violent conflict. The scissors replace the steel that could destroy Troy. Belinda's bodkin is compared to Achilles' scepter with a detailed provenance. And the battle for the lock becomes the Trojan battle for the body of Helen. The battle of the sexes imitates a clash of civilizations. But at every level, the mighty immediately dissolves into the trivial through the release of laughter, especially when snuff becomes the weapon, or when the hero is killed with a frown and revived with a smile. The final Deux ex machina is a strategy used by Pope to resolve the possession of the lock. And like Berenice, the lock is transformed into a star. Pope points to the uniqueness of his particular poem by claiming that the star is in reality the poem which transforms a minor social brawl and a society lady into eternal fame and beauty. Thus, we find that the rape of the lock imitates every single classical convention and replaces the mighty with the trivial. Pope's use of the mock heroic is to liberate a three-pronged satire. The first point of satire is against female vanity and narcissism with their own selves. Pope sees this as eternal, transformed from, or rather transferred from the sylphs to Belinda and beyond. There is also a significant satire against the idle life of the aristocracy, which is contrasted with the merchant who returns from fruitful labor in peace. There's also satire. There's also an oblique satire against various versions of femalehood. Pope criticizes flirtatious womanhood as chaotic for society, hysterical womanhood as destabilizing, and violent womanhood as leading to chaos. Instead, he uses the classical speech of the nobility to advocate the patriarchal version of passive femininity in Clarissa's speech, incorporated in the 1717 edition. While many 18th century poets experimented with the mock heroic, Pope's uniqueness does not merely lie in the contrast between the mighty and the trivial. He chooses to replace the masculine epic structure with the feminine, and thereby transforms the mock epic. He additionally provides great imagination and aestheticization, thereby infusing within the mock heroic not merely laughter and ridicule, but great beauty. The presence of the silks, the great beauty of Belinda, adds a filigree work to the poem, and the rainbow world of the Rape of the Lock stands out because of its aesthetic appeal. Pope's humor is genial and tolerant, and the comedy within the poem dissolves the satire at every point. It must be noted, however, that within this comic structure lies a deep world of patriarchal anxiety, misogyny, and the desire to control the female body. Despite the praise that Pope accords to Belinda, her lock is raped, and Pope's advice is to submit her virginity in marriage. The presence of the colonial violence may be ignored by the profusion of riches, but it exists at a latent level within the text. Pope's technique in using the mock heroic is significant in the blend of the trivialization, feminization, and aestheticization of the epic. The art of substitution and the profuse use of allusion indicates, or rather suffuses the mock heroic with every epic parallel. This is dissolved through the irony within the text, and very often by Pope's use of the zeugma. The zeugma liberates the satire, especially when, for the woman, her virginity and a porcelain vase are rendered equal, or when the queen treats advice and tea at equal levels. However, this hyperbole, especially when Pope describes Belinda, for example, in a line like, "Belinda smiled and the world was gay," sublimates the epic and adds to its great beauty. Pope also uses the Newtonian discovery of refraction, or the Newtonian laws of refraction, to great effect in the way in which the iridescent rainbow world of the silks breathes beauty within the text. To conclude, The Rape of the Lock was a poem provoked by a trivial social quarrel, which could have been harshly ridiculed. But Pope chose the heroicomical, placed Belinda at the center of the text, and feminized the mock epic. He added sublime beauty with a divine machinery, generating triviality, aesthetics, imagination, and laughter at every level. Pope's craft lies in the care with which every epic detail is invoked and substituted, with the comedy dissolving the satirical thrust. Pope also presents, within the battle of the sexes, a distinct sexual innuendo, adding to the pleasure of the text. It is this deft mixture, or it is this deft coalescence of the trivial, the feminine, the aesthetic, the comic, and the sexual that provides an aesthetic texture which makes Pope's poem a masterpiece of the mock heroic. That then is my discussion on the mock heroic in The Rape of the Lock.